Hi friends, in this video we are going to see about the topic exception handling in UiPath, and the activity we use for exception handling is try catch activity, and we are going to see what is system exception and business exception, how it is defined, and everyone will have a doubt, can I get activity name when exception is thrown? Yes, we will be able to get the activity name. And these are the two most used properties while handling exception, that is Exception.Message used to display the exception message and Exception.Source. Using this property only we will be able to get the activity name when exception is thrown. But one condition is there, I will explain it later in video while we seeing the exception examples. So please watch the video continuously. These are the topics we are going to cover today. What is exception and how can we handle it? What are the types of exception? That is, usually we can categorize exception into two types, that is system exception and business exception. System exception, we can also say it as an application exception, and then we will see how to execute try catch activity and what is the use of finally block in try catch. And at the last we will see a real-time task on how exception is handled. Exception handling. How can we define exception handling? It is an unwanted event that interrupts the normal flow of your program or process, and by handling exception we can provide meaningful message to the user. Okay, for example, just consider you have developed an attended bot. Okay, so when you developed an attended bot, if exception comes in the middle, it must be meaningful to the user. For example, some selector has become invalid in a page, that is bot is not able to identify the selector, then what it will happen, it will throw messages cannot able to identify selector and the attributes of the selector. Obviously the user will not know anything about it. Instead of that, you can give a meaningful message to the user saying bot is not able to interact with this particular page. Like that you can give the meaningful message. And another most important aspect of exception handling is, if exception occurs at any transaction, then the next transaction must to be carried out without any interrupt. Okay, that is the next transaction of the flow must be maintained. Just for example, you consider you are having 7 transactions and exception occurred at transaction number 5. What would happen to the 6th and 7th transactions? Bot must not stop at the transaction number 5. It must pick up 6th and 7th transactions and then complete the process. This is a very important step of exception handling, and even we can say the success of your project is also based on how efficiently exception is handled in your project. And now we are going to see try catch activity. That is, when an exception occurs in try block, then the control gets transferred to catch block and then to finally section. Finally block executes whether an exception is occurred or not. Friends, here another important point to be noted is, finally block will get executed if no throw activity is used in the catch block. Otherwise finally block will not get executed. And then try catch activity requires at least 2 sections to be in use. That is, I will show what it actually means. We will go to the studio test designer. I will drag and drop try catch activity. I will drag and drop try catch activity. Now it is throwing validation error. I will put get text and I will put another get text. Now 2 sections is in use, that is try section and finally section. The validation error gone. That's what I am saying here. At least 2 sections must be in use. Again there is validation message showing. Now what I do is, I will just again drag and drop get text and will just select one of the exception type in catch block. That's it. Now the validation error gone. Okay, that's I am explained it here. At least 2 sections to be in use. Okay, next, this is a try catch block. Try block holds the activities that may raise an exception. Under the catch block you have an option to select multiple exception types. You can add multiple number of catch blocks you will be able to add. Okay, finally block holds the activities you wish to execute whether an exception occurs or not. For example, consider that after completing all the transactions, you need to send a report to your client. Then you can include that part in the finally block. Catch block. You can use multiple catches in the catch block. Okay. It contains set of activities to be performed and an exception is thrown in the try block. You can either put a message box and display the message to the user, or you can use the throw activity, or you can use sending mail activity. You can use any activities that you wish to execute. In most of the real-time projects, usually two exceptions will be used in catch block, that is system exception and business exception, because system exception can execute any kind of exception, that is selector not found exception, file not found, or any kind of exception. You can bring it under system exception. And also you can use other exception types based on your project needs. Okay, we are classifying exception as system exception or business exception. System exception: any exception occurred due to system related or application related, you can bring it under system exception, that is system crashes or application slowness, particular page is not loaded or file not downloaded due to the application issue. All these things you will be able to handle under system exception. This is categorized as system exception. Business exception: when business team or client notified you that if particular condition is met in the application, then you can you can directly send it to manual process. We will handle it manually, bot no need to process it. For example, you are searching some customer in an application customer portal and you are coming to know customer is not registered, then you can directly send that particular transaction to business team. This customer is not registered, please process manually. This is we can call as business exception. Or you are searching account number in some application, but account number is not found. If client has informed you if account number is not found in our application, then just send an email to us, account number is not found, we will take care of it. So such scenarios you can directly inform to business team, and then bot can pick up the next transaction and continue the process. This is, you can give the customized message using throw activity. Inside the throw activity, if it is system exception, you can give a new system.exception. Whatever the message you wish to give, there can give in the double quotes, not able to read the file. And then if it is business exception, you can give new UiPath code business rule exception, invoice number not found. For example, in an application you are searching invoice number, and if it is not found, then business team has informed you to throw an exception or to inform them if invoice number not found. Then you will be able, you can capture that exception using business rule exception. So as I informed already, Exception.Message, Exception.Source, these are the two most used properties in exception handling. Exception.Message is used to catch the exception message. Source is used to get the activity description name. Again, as I said earlier, one condition is there for to get the activity description name. Will work only if your workflow is included in the invoke workflow. System exception: when system exception occurs in your process, then you need to close all the application, kill the open browser, and relaunch the application. Why should I do this? For example, just consider, and while processing one transaction, if system exception occurs, it may be due to multiple reasons, as I said earlier. That is due to system slowness or application slowness or page not loaded properly. So if you do these activities like closing all applications, killing the opened browser, and relaunch the application, so the next transaction may not again face the system exception. That's the reason we used to do this whenever system exception occurs. Okay. Business exception: if business exception occurs, bot can pick up the next transaction just by notifying that exception to business team, and use breakpoints and slow step to identify the error path. These are the things useful in debug process. Okay, how exception can be handled in real-time projects. Friends, consider process.xaml is your parent XAML. Okay, inside this parent XAML, I have three child XAML: child 1, child 2, child 3. Now in child1.xaml exception is thrown. I am catching it and then throwing the exception. The control moves to parent process.xaml. Okay. In child2xaml an exception is occurred. I am throwing it again. It is moving to process.xaml. In child2xaml I have invoked child3. Okay. In child3 XAML now exception is thrown. For this child3 XAML parent is child2. So this exception happened at child3 will go to child2, and for child2 XAML the parent is process.xaml. So from child2 XAML it will directly go to the parent, that is process.xaml. That is what I am trying to say is exception thrown at child level of close should return to the parent level of close. Then you can decide what you need to do with an exception message in the catch block of the process.xaml. This is how exceptions can be handled in real-time projects. Under debug section, you can see breakpoint, slow step, step into, step over, step out, and then running the file in debug mode. If you click on this slow step, then activities will be executed slowly, and you can also see each activity will be highlighted. And then highlight elements. If you click on the highlight elements and run the bot, then bot will identify each UI element in your application, and that is it will highlight. If you want to see if exception happens in any particular activity, or if you wish to know what value is coming in that activity, you just right click on that activity. You can see toggle breakpoint, and if you click on this toggle breakpoint, then breakpoint will be set in that particular activity. Then when you run the debug mode, when you run the bot in debug mode, bot will stop when that particular activity comes. Then it will be able to identify if the value is passed correctly or not. Then if you click on this analyze file section under design, you can check whether any validation errors are there in your particular XAML. That is, if you click on validate file, it will validate your XAML, and then check. If you click on validate project, it will validate the entire project. Now we'll go to the studio and check an example. What I'm going to do means I will going to read an Excel file, but actually that Excel file is not there. I'm used try catch block. Inside the sequence I have drag and drop the try catch block. I used an Excel application scope, and in catch block I have used message box. I will just delete everything. I will just use the try block. Catch section I will use file not found exception. I will drag and drop message box. This bot is not able to read the file. Okay. Now I'm going to run this. There is no such file called exception.handling.xlsx, but I'm trying to read it. So what will usually happen now? File not found exception. Some exception is going to be thrown. That is file not found exception is bot will throw. I'm going to catch that exception using file not found exception, and now I'll run this. So now it will display the message bot is not able to read the file. We can also give this meaningful message using throw activity. Throw. How can we give our own message in throw activity means new. This is file not found exception. So file not exception bot not able to read the file. Now again I will run. Now instead of message box it will throw the exception. Exception occurred. So message bot not able to read the file. Exception type it is showing system.input.output.file not found exception. Okay. Now another way of displaying the exception message is instead of my own message I'll just delete it. Exception.message. This will show what actual exception message occurred. Again I am running. I am just showing you different ways of displaying the exception message. Now it will throw the same exception message, that is the exception message happened while trying to read the file. So it's showing the path exception handling was not found. Okay, if you see in finally block I have used on send outlook mail activity, that will not be executed if you have used through activity. It will be executed when only if you have used any message box activity or any other log message is there. If throw activity is used, then control will not come to the finally block section. Okay, now we will see another example. Okay, here I also want to inform another thing. We have used here file not found exception. Okay, it is not necessary that you must use file not found exception. You can also use system.exception. It is used to catch any kind of exception, and you can use the same message throw. This is system.exception, so I am using system.exception, or simply you can use new exception but not able to read the file. Again it will catch the exception because system.exception is used to catch any kind of exception. So it is not necessary that you need to use only file not found exception. But not able to read the file. Now what I am going to do is I will show another example. We will move to this XAML, that is exception handling invalid selector. Now what I am going to do means from this page I am going to read 4 values: invoice number, invoice tax ID, invoice item, invoice total. Okay, I have intentionally made the selector invalid while reading invoice total. So now what will happen? Selector not found exception will happen. It will come to the exception. Again I will delete. I will use selector not found exception. So if you click on exception drop down, browse for types. If you just type system dot, then you can see different types of exception available. Now we are going to use selector not found exception. Selector not found exception. I will give message box but is not able to interact with invoice search page. Okay, now I will run. Bot will throw an exception when it comes across get invoice total activity. Okay, execute. So output it is throwing when it comes to invoice total. This is a selector not found exception. Now I am continuing. This throwing exception message bot is not able to interact with invoice search page. Now instead of this selector not found exception, I can also use as this system.exception. I can capture using system.exception also. When I am giving the same message, bot is not able to interact with invoice search page. Again it will be captured. Again I am running. Invoice number, tax ID, item, read. While reading invoice total, exception occurred. I am running. Now it is displaying the message. Okay, friends, I informed earlier that we will be able to get the activity name using Exception.Source. That is, now exception is happening at this activity, that is get invoice total. We have intentionally made the selector as invalid by writing this table column as 41. Actually this table column number is 4. I just put it as 41. Now I want to get this activity description name, get invoice total. How can I get that? Means now if you use the throw message and check what comes in exception.source, it will just say as throw. This activity name only you will get. I'll show you. New system.exception bot is not able to interact with invoice search page. I'll execute. Okay, now exception happened. Continue. If you see source, it is not displaying the name, that is, it is not displaying that activity name get invoice total, but instead it is displaying this activity name throw. But this is not what we want. Okay, how can we make the bot to display this activity description name, that is get invoice total? This is the activity description name, correct? Here only selector is invalid. Now what we need to do means, I will just comment out this. Okay, I will enable this sequence. Friends, this is the exception handling invalid selectors ML. Here there is no try catch now. I have commented out the earlier sequence. So this is a sequence with no try catch, contains just get text, that is 4 values we are getting: invoice number, invoice tax ID, invoice item, and invoice total. This is where selector is invalid. Now I want to know this, which selector, which activity, in which activity the selector became invalid. And what I need to do means, now I will go to the exception main. From this XAML I am going to invoke exception handling invalid selector. Okay, message box, I am going to put exception occurred at activity name plus Exception.Source. Okay friends, now what I am doing means, this is my main XAML, exception handling main XAML. I am going to invoke invalid selector XAML from this main XAML. Okay, if I click on this open workflow here, in invalid selector XAML I have not used any try catch, only sequence is there. Now I will run from my main file. Now it will display the activity name in the message box. Continue. It will come to the parent. See, exception occurred at activity name get invoice total. Now we got the activity description name. This is how we can get the activity description name using exception.source. Okay. So when you come to know if selector is not stable in any particular page, then you can handle exception like this. Now we'll see some real-time task. Search invoice number and update the details. Basically what we are going to do means, in Acme application we are going to search some invoice number and send an report. Let me log in. Invoice, search for invoice. That is, I am going to search some 5 invoice number. If error is not coming, then I will consider it as business exception and notify to business team. Bot will pick up the next transaction, then again it will check some other transaction and will search and will identify if any result displayed or not. Okay, 322060. Search. Now invoice number appears, means then it will collect the values, that is invoice number, tax ID, invoice item, total date. This is how we have developed using simple XAML. Okay, so loads the, here what we are going to do in that process means first load the asset values, record asset values from orchestrator, that is the Acme URL and the username, password, everything will be loaded from orchestrator, and then launch the Acme application. We are going to search some invoice number as input. If record does not come, then update business team as no record exists. If any system exception occurs, send an email to developer or appropriate team. Okay, if record exists, collect the data and send the successful transactions to business team. This is one real-time task we are going to see. Now I will choose save. I will close this. This is the exception handling task. First I will explain the overview of the XAML project. Click on main. Friends, first what I am doing means, see, this is the process overview. This is the initialization stage, that is here what we are doing means we are declaring two variables, system exception and business exception, and setting it to value nothing, that is no exception values are saved in system exception and business exception. The variable types you can see here, system.exception, this one UiPath code.business rule exception. In any real-time projects you can see this will be set at the beginning, or you can set this business exception dot nothing inside this process.xaml, because business exception starts when actually process is started. Okay, I just used here, and then I am getting the necessary values to launch this application from asset, that is Acme data. I have used two dictionaries, io-config, input output config, input output Acme data. Why these two dictionary means, this dictionary is used to load the values from asset, that is my Acme application URL, username, password, everything I will load from asset. This dictionary is used to get these values. After fetching these values, we need to save in some variable, correct? So to saving that variable, I am using this input output Acme data dictionary. Now get asset values from orchestrator. I am going to kill process. If any application is open, any browser is open, I am going to kill process. Okay. Now if system exception is not nothing, then only I will go move to the next process, that is login application. This login application just launches Acme application. Okay, again if system exception is not nothing, then only it will move to the next level. This is the process.xaml. This is the friends our main process starts. Okay, now you can see try catch have included in the catch block. I have used two exception, that is one is system exception, okay, another one is business rule exception. Okay, if you have identified, I have not used anything like through activity. Okay, here in business rule exception also I have not used through activity. This is my parent XAML, that is process.xaml. This is my parent XAML for all the childs. What I am doing when the exception is occurred inside this process try block, I am just, if system exception occurred, I am categorizing saving that under the exception type variable as system exception, and then invoking the exception handling workflow.xaml. Okay, now what is there in the exception handling workflow XAML means I am taking screenshot. First step, if any exception comes, we must know in which page exception has come. Okay, so I am taking screenshot image path. I am saving this screenshot in this particular path. Okay, that's the image path given. I am saving using this activity, save image activity, and then if condition. I have put one if condition. If it is system exception, what bot need to do? If it is business exception, what need to do? If you remember, system exception occurs, we need to kill the process and send an email to developer and then relaunch the application. That's what I have used here. Okay, is killing the process, that is any opened Internet Explorer, and then sending an email to developers and relaunching the Acme application if any system exception occurs. Okay, and then here, if it is business exception, I am not doing anything, just I am sending mail to business team and then my bot will pick up the next transaction. This is how exception is handled. In any real-time project, separate XAML will be there. If you take the business rule exception, again I am saving this variable in exception type variable, it is business rule exception, and also I am invoking here exception handling workflow.xaml. The same XAML I am invoking in both system exception and business rule exception. In finally block, I am sending an mail with the successful transaction. Okay, this I have set in finally block. This sequence will get executed because I have not used any throw activity in catch block of my catch block. If throw activity is used, this finally block will not get executed. Inside this process, there's invoice process.xaml and try block search invoice XAML, another child workflow. So this is where our process initially starts. I am giving 5 invoice number as input. Okay, and then another data table is built to save the invoice number, invoice tax ID, invoice item, invoice total, invoice date. If record comes, bot will save the values in this data table. This must execute only one time. Okay, because invoice number, this is the input we are going to give only one time. So I am giving this when Acme data counter. This using this counter variable, we are going to increment the value every time the bot process. So when 5 transaction comes, bot will stop the process. So when it processing first time, it will assign these values, that is it will read this data table and it will create this output invoice data table. Now I will run this and show you how it executes. Here we are giving 5 invoice number as input. Okay, so it is less than or equal to 4, this process will get repeat. When it becomes 5, then it will close the process. Bot processed all transaction data. I will run this. I will close the existing Acme application. Now to launch the Acme application. Yes, it is launching now. And type in email, password. It will just search the 5 invoice number we given as input in the input data table. First one it is searching, value is there. Okay. Second one it is searching, value is not there, that is business exception. Invoice number is not found in the application. Third transaction, fourth transaction also value is there. Fifth transaction, value is not there. Now bot processed all the input invoice numbers. And what is happened? Bot completed the transaction. So we'll go to my mail. You can see this one is the executed business exception. That is when bot searched the invoice number, no invoice number exists. So the first step we did in exception handling workflow is take screenshot. Bot immediately take the screenshot. Now we know where the exception has happened. We can use this for system exceptions. For business exception, it is up to us whether to use or not, because we know when business exception will happen. Here also see invoice number is dynamically given in the subject, which invoice number exception is happened. Here we can see this is the invoice number, and this is successful transaction data. Only 3 transactions are successful. I have used this sending mail part in the finally block. So bot is executing this finally after processing all the transactions. I will show you where business exception is used. We'll go to the say after if no invoice data is exist now, and what I'm throwing means I'm throwing here business throw business exception. So I'm using throw in all the child activities. Once it is thrown business exception, what will happen means this message invoice number not found in the Acme application. From this search invoice, it will go to the parent, that is invoice process. Then it will go to the main. The exception message will come to the business rule exception message will come to the catch block of the process.xml. Here what we are doing, we are just captured that using this exception. If we use exception.message, then we will be able to see that message. If you look at here, I'm using in the mail subject I have captured invoice number, and then in mail body I am capturing that exception message. You can see here business exception mail body. I have already set this in asset, that is this phrase I have set in asset. Please allow team please process manually. This reason I am capturing from the business exception. Okay friends, another thing I want to inform, if you see here we are initializing the values from asset, and then we are checking system exception is occurred or not, and going to the next level, that is launching Acme application, and then we are just using counter, we are completing all the transactions, and after completing all the transactions we are put the log message bot processed all data. If we use the RE framework, this exception handling can be done much more efficiently. Okay, because this retrying process is all inbuilt in RE framework, and then the counter value we have given here, this counter value processing transaction number counter can be automatically increased in RE framework. So all this template is given already in RE framework. So next video we will see about RE framework. Friends, if you like this video, please subscribe and support, and please share to your friends. Thank you.